Hi, I'm Bob with Purdue MEP. The topic for this module is technology deployment. There's a lot of preparation and planning that goes into the actual deployment of a new manufacturing technology. To ensure that the deployment process goes as smoothly as possible, here are some steps to consider. First, ensure employees from all affected departments are notified well in advance before the date of deployment, and explain what areas of production will or could be affected during the deployment process. Understand the physical footprint needed for installing the new technology and remove objects and materials that might interfere with the installation process. For the cobot deployment project, an area adjacent to the milling machine was made available for staging the new equipment. Confirm installation details with the technology solution provider, such as what equipment and areas will they need access to? How long should the installation process take? What additional support might they need from your team? For example, with the machine monitoring project, the system integrators only needed access to the electrical panels of the production equipment, and the installation process only required 1 day. With the cobot deployment, access to the milling machines for installing an auto door, compressed air for the pneumatic grippers, and feedstock for testing the machines were needed. The installation process required a full week for installation, programming, and troubleshooting. Deploy the pre-identified process and workflow changes. Verify the expected impacts. How do these changes actually affect upstream and downstream processes versus what was originally anticipated? One word of advice is to expect the deployment to take longer than planned. There are always unforeseen challenges that arise during the deployment process, and some take longer to resolve than others. So it's a good idea to have contingency plans in place in case of delays. For example, with the cobot deployment project, the safety zones had to be recalibrated multiple times to strike the right balance between safety and operability. The team also encountered difficulties in removing parts from the collets, which required extra time for realigning the collets to make the part removal easier. Employee training is also a key element of deployment. Ensure the availability of individuals who need to be trained and allocate time in their schedule for training on how to use the new technology. Ask the vendor or installer to provide user manuals or other key documentation for the new technology. Ensure that the employees take notes while they are being trained because it's easy to forget details when trying to absorb so much new information about a new technology. Make sure you train more than one person on how to use the technology. If you train just one person, what happens if they leave your company? Coordinate deployment with the production schedule to minimize business interruption. You may need to shift production to build inventory if equipment will be taken offline for an extended period during the deployment process. Testing and validation is one of the last steps of deployment. If applicable, conduct a factory acceptance test at the solution provider's facility prior to deployment. Once the technology is actually installed at your location, try to test the robustness of the new technology by putting the technology through as many different operational scenarios as reasonably possible after the installation is complete. If any performance issues are observed, have the installer make any necessary modifications before you sign off on the acceptance test. Finally, after the deployment is completed, measure your KPIs and compare the results against the baseline performance you measured before the project began. This will hopefully confirm that you are seeing the benefits you expected by investing in this new technology. With proactive communication, coordination, and planning, you can ensure that your team is as ready as possible to deploy a new technology when the time finally comes to install and integrate the technology into your facility.